Have you ever discovered who truly cares about you at the moment you needed them most? That's exactly what happened to me last year when I found myself alone in a hospital bed, staring at a diagnosis that would change everything. My own children, the 3 people I had sacrificed everything for, couldn't find time to visit me. But what they didn't realize was that their absence would lead me to make a decision that would alter all of our lives forever. Because sometimes, the most powerful lessons come when we're at our most vulnerable. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning had started like any other Tuesday. I had watered my garden, prepared my usual cup of chamomile tea, and settled into my favorite armchair by the window to read the novel my book club had selected for the month. At 62, I had finally reached that peaceful stage of life where I could enjoy the little things without the constant rush of deadlines and obligations. The ringing of my phone cut through the quiet. I recognized the number immediately. Oakwood Medical Center, where I'd had some routine tests the week before. Probably just confirming my follow-up appointment, I thought, marking my page before answering. "Eleanor Walsh speaking," I said, expecting the usual cheerful voice of the receptionist. Instead, I heard Dr. Rivera's measured tone. "Mrs. Walsh, I'm calling about your test results. We found something concerning that requires immediate attention. Could you come in this afternoon?" There was something in her voice, a careful restraint, that made my stomach tighten. "How concerning are we talking about, doctor?" A pause. "I'd prefer to discuss this in person, Mrs. Walsh. Can you come in at 2 Salmonera p.m.? I've raised 3 children, buried a husband, and navigated 4 decades of teaching high school English. I know when someone is softening a blow. Please, just tell me, is it cancer?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes, Mrs. Walsh. The preliminary results suggest pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. The world around me seemed to shift slightly, the familiar contours of my living room suddenly feeling distant and unreal. My husband James had died of lung cancer 8 years ago. I had watched cancer consume him, transforming the vibrant, laughing man I loved into a shadow. And now it had come for me. "Mrs. Walsh, are you still there?" I realized I'd been silent for too long. "Yes, I'm here. I'll come in at 2 at..." After hanging up, I sat motionless, the novel forgotten in my lap. My mind immediately went to my children. Amanda, my oldest at 38, lived just 20 minutes away in Meadowbrook with her husband and 2 teenagers. Christopher, 35, had an apartment downtown, barely 15 minutes from my house. And Rebecca, my youngest at 32, was staying temporarily at her friend's condo while her own place was being renovated, not even an hour's drive north in Lakeside. They would want to know immediately. Amanda had always been my practical one, the planner who would research every treatment option and organize a schedule. Christopher, analytical and thoughtful, would ask the right questions that might not occur to me in my shocked state. And Rebecca, my empathetic artist, would know exactly how to lift my spirits during what would undoubtedly be difficult days ahead. I reached for my phone again, hands trembling slightly as I dialed Amanda's number first. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice harried. "Mom, can I call you back? I'm in the middle of planning the charity auction for Zach's school, and the caterer just canceled." "Amanda, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've just heard from Dr. Rivera. I need to go to the hospital this afternoon. They found..." "Mom, I'm sorry, but I literally have the event coordinator on the other line. Can we talk tonight? This auction is raising money for the new science lab, and as PTA president, I can't let it fall apart." Before I could explain the gravity of the situation, the line went dead. I stared at the phone for a moment, then took a deep breath and called Christopher. "Hey, Mom," he answered, the sounds of his busy architectural firm humming in the background. "What's up?" I'm heading into a client presentation in 5 minutes. Christopher, I need to talk to you about something important. The doctor called with my test results, and it's not good news. Mom, I'm so sorry, but I really can't talk right now. This is the Westridge Commercial Center project. You know, the one I've been working toward for months? The clients are walking in. Now, can I call you tonight or tomorrow morning? Sure, I said quietly. Good luck with your presentation. Thanks, Mom. Love you. And he was gone. Taking another steadying breath, I dialed Rebecca's number, holding on to hope that my youngest, always the most sensitive to others' needs, would hear what I wasn't explicitly saying. That I needed her now. Mom? Her voice was bright, with music playing faintly in the background. Is everything okay? Rebecca? Honey, I've just gotten some difficult news from my doctor. I have to go to the hospital this afternoon. They found pancreatic cancer. Oh no, Mom. That's terrible. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Listen, I'm at this really important networking event for my art gallery. There are some potential investors here who could finally help me open my own space. Can I come by tomorrow? Or maybe Thursday? My throat tightened. Of course, I understand. This is a big opportunity for you. You're the best, Mom. I promise I'll come see you as soon as this is over. Love you tons. After hanging up, I sat in the sudden silence of my living room, the reality of my situation sinking in. None of them had really heard me. None of them had grasped that this wasn't a minor inconvenience but a life-altering diagnosis. I had raised them to pursue their dreams, to build full lives, and they had done exactly that. But somewhere along the way, had I also taught them that I would always understand, always accommodate, always come last? I gathered my purse, keys, and a light cardigan, then called a taxi to take me to the hospital. I could drive myself, but something told me I shouldn't be behind the wheel after receiving news like this. As I locked my front door, I noticed Mrs. Patel from next door working in her garden. She waved cheerfully, and I managed a smile in return. Should I tell her? No, not yet. First, I needed to hear everything from Dr. Rivera, understand exactly what I was facing. The hospital waiting room was half full when I arrived, the usual mix of anxious faces and thumbed through magazines. I checked in at the reception desk, my voice sounding strangely normal as I stated my name and appointment time. Mrs. Walsh, the young receptionist said with a smile. Dr. Rivera asked that you be taken straight back. Nurse Wilson will show you to the consultation room. Nurse Wilson, a tall woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, appeared almost immediately. As she led me down the corridor, she placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Dr. Rivera will be with you shortly. Can I get you water or tea while you wait? Water would be nice, thank you. Left alone in the small consultation room, I found myself studying the medical certificates on the wall, the anatomy posters, the neatly arranged pamphlets about patient services, anything to avoid thinking about what was coming next. When Dr. Rivera entered, her face confirmed everything the phone call had implied. Eleanor, she said, using my first name, never a good sign from a doctor. I wish I had better news. For the next 30 minutes, she explained my diagnosis in detail. The pancreatic tumor was significant, and there was evidence it had spread to nearby lymph nodes. Stage 3. Not the worst possible scenario, but serious enough. We discussed treatment options, aggressive chemotherapy, possibly radiation, and surgery if the tumor could be reduced enough to make it operable. What's the prognosis? I asked, the teacher in me wanting clear facts, measurable outcomes. Dr. Rivera's expression softened. With aggressive treatment, many patients at your stage see significant improvement. The 5-year survival rate is about 13%, but those statistics include patients of all ages and health conditions. You're otherwise healthy, Eleanor, which works in your favor. 13%. The English teacher in me couldn't help but think what a dismal grade that would be on a test. Below failing, yet here it represented hope. "When do we start?" I asked. "I'd like to admit you today for additional tests, and we can begin chemotherapy by the end of the week. Do you have someone who can bring you some personal items? Family who can be with you?" I thought about my 3 unanswered calls. "Yes," I lied. "My children will be coming." By evening, I was settled into a private room on the oncology floor. Nurse Wilson, Margaret she'd asked me to call her, had helped me change into a hospital gown and get comfortable. The room was nicer than I expected, with a large window overlooking the hospital gardens and a small seating area where visitors could sit comfortably. Visitors. I checked my phone again. No missed calls. No messages asking how the appointment had gone. Nothing. I tried calling each of them again, but all 3 went to voicemail. I left brief messages explaining that I had been admitted to Oakwood Medical and would be starting treatment soon. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Nothing to worry about right now," I added, not wanting to cause panic, "but I'd love to see you when you have time." Dinner came and went, hospital food that lived down to its reputation. An evening nurse named Daniel checked my vitals and helped me understand how to adjust the bed and call for assistance if needed. The hospital grew quieter as visiting hours ended, and still my phone remained silent. Just as I was preparing to turn off the light and try to sleep, my phone chimed with a notification. For a moment, hope flared. One of my children had finally seen my messages. But it wasn't a text or a missed call. It was a social media alert. Amanda had posted a photo from the charity auction planning meeting. A group of well-dressed women raising wine glasses around an elegantly set table. When you work with amazing people, it doesn't feel like work. Charity auction. Supermom Squad. Priorities. Posted 30 minutes ago. The catering crisis apparently resolved, but still no time to return her mother's call. With a sigh, I scrolled further and saw Christopher had shared a post as well, a rendering of his building design with the caption, "Client presentation knocked it out of the park, celebrating with the team at Riverfront Grill. Architect life. Work hard, play hard. Success." His "can't talk right now" moment had clearly passed hours ago, replaced by celebration drinks rather than a call to his mother. And then there was Rebecca's update, a series of photos from her networking event, which looked more like a gallery party than a professional gathering. Making connections and making magic happen. Watch this space for big news about my future gallery. Artist life, ditch dreams, come true, networking, it. I set my phone on the bedside table and turned off the light. In the darkness of the hospital room, with only the occasional beep of equipment and the distant sounds of the nurse's station for company, I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Then another. Soon I was crying silently, my body shaking with the effort to keep quiet. It wasn't about the cancer. Strangely, I hadn't cried about that yet. It was about the realization that in my children's busy, successful lives I had worked so hard to help them build, there wasn't room for me and my crisis. Not even enough room for a return phone call. I must have fallen asleep eventually, because the next thing I knew, morning light was streaming through the window, and Margaret was gently waking me for blood work. "Did anyone come by after my shift ended?" she asked, skillfully inserting the needle for the blood draw. "No," I said simply. She nodded, her eyes kind but not pitying. Family can be complicated, especially when difficult news hits. "They're just busy," I said automatically, the excuse I'd been making for them for years. "They have their own lives." Margaret secured the vial of blood and removed the needle, pressing a cotton ball to the site. "Everyone's busy, Eleanor, but some people make time for what matters." After she left, I reached for my phone, more out of habit than expectation. Still no messages from my children. Instead, there was a text from Diane, my fellow English teacher, and closest friend from the high school where I'd taught for 30 years before retiring. Eleanor, Patricia from book club told me you missed yesterday and might be at the hospital. Is everything okay? Can I bring you anything? I hadn't even thought about the book club meeting I'd missed, and yet, here was Diane, checking on me simply because I hadn't shown up where expected. I texted back, "At Oakwood Medical, pancreatic cancer diagnosis yesterday, starting treatment soon." Her response was immediate, "I'm coming right now. Room number?" 20 minutes later, Diane burst through my door, her silver bob slightly disheveled and her arms full of items, a tote bag, what looked like a small blanket, and a paper cup holder with 2 coffees. "I brought reinforcements," she announced, setting everything down. "Your favorite throw from my guest room where you always sit during book club, decent coffee because hospital coffee is criminal, and a bag with essentials. Charger, hand cream, lip balm, and the novel you're missing discussions on." I felt my eyes fill with tears again, but for an entirely different reason this time. "You didn't have to do all this," I said. Diane fixed me with the same look she used to give students who tried to convince her they'd done the reading when they clearly hadn't. "Of course I did. It's what friends do." She handed me one of the coffees and settled into the visitor's chair. "Now, tell me everything the doctors said, and don't sugarcoat it. I want to know what we're dealing with." Such a simple word, but it made all the difference. For the next hour, I shared everything Dr. Rivera had told me, and Diane took notes in the small notebook she always carried, a habit from decades of teaching. She asked thoughtful questions, looked up terms we didn't understand on her phone, and helped me organize my thoughts about the treatment ahead. When Dr. Rivera arrived for morning rounds, Diane stayed, introducing herself and asking additional questions that hadn't occurred to me. The doctor seemed impressed and relieved that I had such support. "It's good to have an advocate," she said, glancing approvingly at Diane. "Cancer treatment is a team effort." After Dr. Rivera left, a hospital social worker named Benita came to discuss practical matters: insurance, medical leave paperwork, home care options for when I would be discharged between treatments. Again, Diane took notes, offering to help with forms and phone calls. "What about your children?" Benita asked gently. "Will they be helping with your care?" I hesitated, but Diane spoke up. "Eleanor has 3 adult children who will be involved," she said with more certainty than the situation warranted. "And she has a strong network of friends from her teaching days and our book club. We'll make sure she has everything she needs." When Benita left, promising to return with resource packets, I turned to Diane. "You didn't have to say that about my children. They don't even know I'm here yet. Not really." Diane's expression softened. "They will help, Eleanor. Once they understand how serious this is. They're good kids. You raised them to be. They're just distracted right now." I wanted to believe her. Maybe she was right. Maybe they just hadn't grasped the severity of the situation. Maybe once they visited and saw me here, in a hospital bed with an oncology identification, bracelet reality would sink in. Around noon, my phone finally chimed with a text from Amanda. "Sorry I missed your call yesterday. Auction planning was chaos. Everything okay?" I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Should I downplay it to spare her worry, or be blunt about the gravity of my situation? Before I could decide, another text came through. This one from Christopher. "Mom, just got your voicemail. At Oakwood Medical? What's going on?" And then, almost immediately after, one from Rebecca. "OMG, Mom just heard your message. Hospital? What's happening?" All 3, within minutes of each other. Had they been talking? Had one finally listened to my voicemail and alerted the others? "They're texting now," I told Diane, who nodded encouragingly. See? They're checking in. Text them back with your room number. They'll come. I sent a group text to all three. Room 412 at Oakwood. Pancreatic cancer diagnosis yesterday. Starting chemotherapy soon. Doctor says prognosis is better with aggressive treatment. Not in any pain right now, so please don't worry too much. Would love to see you when you can make it. Their responses came quickly. Amanda. On my way as soon as I drop the kids at soccer. Give me 2 hours. Christopher. Finishing up at work and heading there. Should arrive by 4. Rebecca. OMG. Mom, I'm so sorry. Coming straight from Lakeside. Traffic might be bad, but I'll be there by dinner for sure. Relief washed over me. They were coming. Of course they were coming. They just hadn't understood how serious things were until now. Diane stayed through lunch, sharing half of her turkey sandwich from the cafeteria with me because it looked better than the hospital tray that arrived. When visiting hours were technically over at 2 Psy, she simply moved her chair into the corner of the room and kept working on her crossword puzzle, daring any nurse to suggest she leave. You don't have to stay until they get here, I told her. I'm fine now, really. I know you are, she said, not looking up from her puzzle, but I'm comfortable right here. By 3:30, I was growing anxious, frequently checking the clock and the door. Diane noticed but said nothing, merely providing reassuring smiles when our eyes met. At 4:15, a nurse I hadn't met before came in to check my vitals. Your daughter called the nurse's station, she mentioned casually as she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm. She's running late, but wanted you to know she'll be here by 6 G. Something about the kids' soccer practice running over. Amanda. At least she had called to let me know. At 5:30, my phone chimed with a text from Christopher. Got held up at work. Client called with urgent changes to the design. We'll try to come by tomorrow morning instead. Keep me posted on what the doctors say. Love you. I showed the message to Diane, who frowned slightly but quickly composed her expression. Work emergencies happen, she said, but her tone lacked conviction. By 7 p.m., only Rebecca had neither arrived nor sent a message explaining her absence. Visiting hours would be over at 8 HUR. Diane had finally left at 6 HUR, extracting a promise from me to call if I needed anything at all, and assuring me she would be back tomorrow with more book club members who were eager to visit. Just as the dinner tray was being cleared away, my phone lit up with Rebecca's face. She was calling, not texting. That was something, at least. Mom, I am so sorry, she began, her voice breathless. Traffic from Lakeside was a nightmare. And then Stella. You remember my friend Stella? She got tickets to this amazing gallery opening downtown, the one with the artist I've been dying to meet who could be a perfect fit for my future gallery space. And it was tonight only, and I thought maybe I could do both. But the opening ran late, and now visiting hours are almost over, and I'm still downtown, and… It's okay, Rebecca, I interrupted, a strange calm settling over me. You can come another day. Are you sure? I feel awful. I really wanted to see you. I know you did, honey. Go enjoy the rest of your evening with Stella. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, pleasant, accommodating, but somehow, distant. You're the best, Mom. I promise I'll come tomorrow. First thing. Well, after my breakfast meeting, but definitely before lunch. After hanging up, I sat in the growing darkness of my hospital room, the reality of my situation becoming clearer with each passing hour. I had raised 3 successful, independent children who were living full and busy lives, exactly as I had hoped they would. But I had somehow failed to teach them one of life's most essential lessons, that being there for someone you love isn't just about showing up when it's convenient. It's about rearranging priorities when it matters most. The night nurse, Sophia, came in to give me my evening medication and noticed my expression. Rough day? Just realizing some things I probably should have seen long ago, I replied. She patted my hand sympathetically. Sometimes it takes a health crisis to show us what's really important, and who thinks we're really important. After she left, I picked up my phone one more time, not to check for messages, but to look at photos. I scrolled back through years of family gatherings, holidays, graduations, weddings. In every picture, there I was, beaming proudly at my children's accomplishments and milestones. I had never missed a single important event in their lives. Not one. I set the phone down and reached for the notepad and pen on the bedside table. At the top of the page, I wrote, "What matters most?" And underneath, 1. Update Will. Tomorrow would bring more tests, the beginning of treatment, and perhaps visits from my children. But tonight had brought clarity. And with that clarity came a decision that would change all of our lives, though they didn't know it yet. Because sometimes, the most important lessons are the ones we never expected to teach. Morning arrived with the soft shuffling of hospital, staff changing shifts. I'd slept surprisingly well, my decision bringing a strange sense of peace. The breakfast tray came, along with my morning medications and a cheerful nurse named Lucia, who didn't seem to notice, or at least didn't mention, that I had no visitors. Dr. Rivera will be by later this morning to discuss starting your treatment. Tomorrow, she said, checking my vitals with efficient movements. Is there anything you need in the meantime? Actually, yes, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. Could you help me find out if the hospital has a notary or legal services available for patients? Lucia paused, her pen hovering over my chart. We do have a patient advocate who can help with legal matters. I can ask her to stop by. She studied my face briefly. Is this about advance directives? Many patients want those in place before starting treatment. Partly, I said, not elaborating further. Thank you. After she left, I reached for my phone to check for messages. There was a text from Amanda sent at 11:30 p.m. last night. So sorry I couldn't make it today. Zach had a meltdown after soccer about his science project being due tomorrow. Totally forgot about it. We'll definitely come tomorrow after I drop the kids at school. Need me to bring anything? Christopher had emailed rather than texted. Mom, talk to Dr. Hendricks. Remember my friend from college who went to med school? He says Oakwood has an excellent oncology department. He's sending some articles about pancreatic cancer treatments you might want to discuss with your doctors. We'll try to visit tomorrow afternoon if my client meeting wraps up early. Nothing from Rebecca. I responded to both with the same brief message. Looking forward to seeing you. Don't worry about bringing anything. The door to my room opened, and Diane appeared, carrying a tote bag and accompanied by 2 other women from our book club, Patricia, a retired librarian with a crown of white curls, and Helen, a former math teacher who had taught down the hall. From me for 20 years. Reinforcements have arrived, Diane announced. Patricia brought her famous lemon bars. She sweet-talked the nurses into letting us bring them in. And Helen has every issue of The New Yorker from the past month because, and I quote, hospital magazines are always outdated and terrible. The women surrounded my bed, pulling up chairs without waiting for an invitation. There were no awkward expressions of pity, no uncomfortable silences, just the same warmth and chatter that characterized our monthly book discussions. Eleanor, you look better than half the teachers did during standardized testing week, Helen said, arranging the magazines on my bedside table. Cancer clearly doesn't know who it's dealing with. I laughed, the sound surprising me. I haven't started treatment yet. Ask me again in a week or 2. Patricia opened her container of lemon bars, the sweet citrus scent momentarily masking the antiseptic hospital smell. Well, we've worked out a schedule. Someone from the book club will be here every day to keep you company, bring proper food, and run interference with medical jargon. Most of us taught teenagers for decades. We're not intimidated by people in white coats using big words. The lump in my throat made it difficult to speak. You don't have to do that. I'm sure my children will be helping once they sort out their schedules." The three women exchanged glances but said nothing, a courtesy that somehow made me feel both grateful and more certain about the decision I'd made last night. Around 10 o'clock, a woman in a neat navy suit knocked on my open door. "Mrs. Walsh, I'm Keisha Montgomery, one of the hospital's patient advocates. Nurse Lucia mentioned, you were asking about legal services?" Diane immediately stood up. "We should give you some privacy for this. Ladies, let's go find that tea garden the brochure mentioned." After they left, Keisha sat in the chair Diane had vacated, opening a leather portfolio. "How can I help you today?" "I need to revise my will," I said, getting straight to the point. "Is that something you can assist with, or can you recommend someone who can?" If Keisha was surprised, she didn't show it. "I'm not an attorney, but we do have a relationship with several law firms that provide services to our patients. Some of them can come directly to the hospital if needed." She made a note in her portfolio. "May I ask if this is urgent, or is it something that could wait until you're discharged?" I met her gaze steadily. "I'd like to take care of it before my children visit." Understanding flickered in her eyes. She'd probably seen this scenario play out before. "I understand. I can have someone here this afternoon if that works for you." "That would be perfect. Thank you." We discussed a few more details, what type of changes I wanted to make, whether I had an existing will. I did, drafted after James died. And if I had given thought to medical proxies and advanced directives. I had, years ago, naming Amanda as my medical proxy. After Keisha left, promising to return with an attorney by 2 p.m., I felt lighter somehow. Taking control of what I could in the face of a disease that left so much beyond my control was empowering. Dr. Rivera arrived shortly before noon, accompanied by a younger doctor she introduced as Dr. Chen, an oncology specialist. Together, they explained the treatment plan they had developed, an aggressive chemotherapy regimen starting tomorrow, followed by reassessment after 6 weeks to determine if radiation or surgery might be beneficial. "I won't sugarcoat this, Eleanor," Dr. Rivera said. "The treatment will be difficult. There will be side effects, fatigue, nausea, potential hair loss, lowered immunity. But you're otherwise healthy, and we believe this gives us the best chance of shrinking the tumor." "I appreciate your honesty," I said, "and I'm ready to start." Dr. Chen handed me several pamphlets. These explain the treatment in detail, as well as resources available to help manage side effects. "Will someone be with you during your first treatment tomorrow?" Many patients find it helpful to have support. "My book club friends will be here," I said, not mentioning my children. "They've arranged a schedule." Both doctors nodded approvingly. "A good support system makes a significant difference," Dr. Rivera said. "Not just emotionally, but practically. There will be days when simple tasks feel overwhelming." After they left, I found myself thinking about what Dr. Rivera had said about support making a difference. I had always been the supporter, rarely the supported. Even when James was sick, I had been the one coordinating his care, managing the household, and comforting our children. I never asked for help. It simply wasn't in my nature. But now, facing my own mortality, I had to acknowledge that I would need support. And it was becoming increasingly clear where that support would and wouldn't be coming from. The early afternoon passed quietly. I read one of the magazines Helen had brought, tried to eat some of the hospital lunch, and exchanged texts with a few former colleagues who had heard about my diagnosis. Around 1:30, Diane returned alone, explaining that Patricia and Helen had gone home, but would be back on different days according to their Eleanor schedule, as they were calling it. "I can leave if you still need privacy for your legal matters," she offered. "No," I said, suddenly certain. "I'd like you to stay if you don't mind. Actually, I'd appreciate your input." Diane looked surprised but pleased. "Of course. whatever you need. At precisely 2 p.m., Keisha returned with a distinguished-looking man in his 60s. Mrs. Walsh, this is Martin Reynolds from Baxter. Reynolds and Shaw. He specializes in estate planning and has kindly agreed to come directly to the hospital today. Martin Reynolds had kind eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. After introductions and Keisha's departure, he set up his laptop on the rolling table that extended over my bed. Ms. Montgomery explained that you'd like to revise an existing will, he began. I understand this is happening concurrently with a new diagnosis, so please know we can take breaks whenever needed. Thank you, but I'm feeling quite clear about what I want to do, I said. This is my friend Diane Mathers. I've asked her to stay for this discussion if that's all right. Of course, he nodded. Now, before we begin with specific changes, could you tell me a bit about your current will and what prompted you to revise it? I took a deep breath. My current will was drafted 8 years ago after my husband James passed away. It's fairly straightforward. Our house and most of our assets divided equally among our 3 adult children, Amanda, Christopher, and Rebecca. There are a few specific bequests, family heirlooms, jewelry, that sort of thing, but nothing complicated. Martin nodded, making notes. And what changes would you like to make? I glanced briefly at Diane, whose expression remained neutral, but supportive. I'd like to create a more structured inheritance plan. Rather than dividing everything equally and immediately among my children, I want to establish a trust with specific conditions. As I outlined my wishes, Martin listened attentively, asking clarifying questions and offering suggestions where appropriate. The framework that emerged over the next hour was both fair and purposeful. Each of my children would receive a modest, immediate inheritance, enough to be meaningful but not life-changing. The bulk of my estate would be held in trust, with distributions tied to specific conditions that reflected the values I had tried and perhaps failed to instill: compassion, presence, and meaningful contribution to others. So, to summarize, Martin said after we had worked through the details, each child will receive $50,000 outright upon your passing. The remaining assets, your home, investments, retirement accounts, and insurance policies, will be held in the Eleanor Walsh Family Trust. The trust will make distributions when your children demonstrate commitment to the values outlined. Regular. Volunteer work with verified organizations, attendance at family events, and mentorship of young people in their respective fields. That's correct, I confirmed. And I'd like Diane to serve as the trust administrator, if she's willing. Diane's eyebrows shot up. Eleanor, are you sure? That's a significant responsibility. There's no one I trust more to understand the spirit of what I'm trying to accomplish, I said simply. Diane reached over and squeezed my hand. Then I accept. But let's hope this trust doesn't come into effect for many, many years. Martin smiled. That's always our goal with estate planning. He turned back to his laptop. There's one more element we should discuss: medical directives and healthcare proxy. Your current documents name your daughter Amanda. Would you like to keep that arrangement? I hesitated, thinking of Amanda's unanswered calls and broken promise to visit. No. I'd like to name Diane as my healthcare proxy, if she's willing to take on that responsibility as well. Diane's eyes widened, but she nodded solemnly. Of course. By 4 p.m., we had completed the revisions. Martin promised to have the documents prepared for signing tomorrow, including arranging for witnesses and a notary. As he packed up his laptop, he paused. Mrs. Walsh, I've been practicing estate law for over 30 years. What you're doing, creating an inheritance plan that reflects and reinforces your values, is something I wish more clients would consider. It's not punitive, it's purposeful. Your children may not understand that immediately, but in time, I believe they will. After he left, Diane and I sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Are you sure about this? She finally asked. Your children might see it as, well, as a punishment. I know, I sighed. And maybe a part of me wanted it to sting a little at first. But the more we worked through it with Martin, the more I realized this isn't about punishing them for not visiting me in the hospital. It's about finally addressing a pattern that's been years in the making. They've grown accustomed to taking without giving back, not just to me, but in general. That's not how James and I raised them, and it's not the legacy I want to leave. Diane nodded slowly. I understand. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Our conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the door. Amanda burst in, her designer handbag dangling from one arm and a gift basket wrapped in cellophane clutched in the other. Mom, I'm so sorry I couldn't come yesterday. The auction planning is just... She stopped short when she saw Diane. Oh, hello. I didn't realize Mom had visitors. Amanda, you remember Diane from the book club? I said, gesturing between them. Amanda nodded distractedly. Of course. Nice to see you again. She set the gift basket on the bedside table and leaned down to kiss my cheek. How are you feeling? Have the doctors told you anything new? Before I could answer, Christopher appeared in the doorway, carrying a leather messenger bag and looking slightly harried. Sorry I'm late, Mom. Traffic was a nightmare and... He too stopped when he saw we weren't alone. Oh, hi. Christopher. This is my friend Diane, I said. Diane, my son Christopher. More awkward greetings were exchanged as Christopher set down his bag and pulled a folder from it. I brought those articles from Dr. Hendricks I mentioned. He says they're the most recent research on your type of cancer. Diane stood up, gathering her purse. I should let you have family time. Eleanor, I'll be back tomorrow morning before your treatment starts. Thank you for everything today, I said meaningfully. After Diane left, Amanda immediately took her vacated chair. Mom, why didn't you tell us how serious this was right away? We had to hear from each other that you're already admitted and starting chemo tomorrow. I did tell you, I said quietly. On my first call, I mentioned the cancer diagnosis. And in my messages afterward, I explained I was in the hospital. Amanda had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Well, you didn't make it sound urgent. Cancer is generally considered urgent, Amanda, Christopher said, a note of self-righteousness in his voice that suggested he was distancing himself from his own delayed response. Let's not argue, I said, wanting to focus on the present rather than relitigate yesterday's disappointments. I'm starting chemotherapy tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Dr. Rivera says the initial side effects might be manageable, but we'll see how it goes. Amanda frowned. Tomorrow at 9, I have a meeting with Zach's teacher about his IEP at 8:30. I could try to reschedule, but it took weeks to get this appointment. And I have the final client presentation for the Westridge project, Christopher added. But I could definitely come by afterward around noon. I felt a familiar weight settling in my chest. Not disappointment exactly, but a confirmation that my decision with Martin had been the right one. That's fine. Diane and some other friends from the book club will be here. The book club, ladies? Amanda's tone carried a hint of dismissal. Mom, this is serious medical treatment. Don't you want family with you? The irony of her question after her immediate refusal to be present was not lost on me. Of course, I'd love to have family with me, Amanda. But as you and Christopher have commitments, I'm fortunate to have friends who can adjust their schedules. Christopher had the decency to look uncomfortable. We'll definitely be here for your next treatment, once we have more notice to plan around it. Of course, I said, not mentioning that cancer treatment schedules weren't designed around professional calendars and school meetings. The conversation shifted to safer topics. How my grandchildren were doing, Christopher's building project, the weather. No one mentioned Rebecca's absence, though I caught Amanda checking her phone several times, presumably texting her sister. Around 5:30, as dinner trays were being delivered to rooms, Rebecca finally appeared, slightly out of breath, and carrying a small potted orchid. Mom! I'm so sorry I'm late. The traffic from Lakeside was insane, and then I had to stop for gas, and... She stopped, noticing her siblings. "Oh, you're both here too. Great." There was something in her voice, a hint of competition perhaps, that I hadn't noticed before, as if her siblings' presence somehow diminished the significance of her own visit. "It's good to see you, Rebecca," I said sincerely. Despite everything, the sight of all three of my children together in my hospital room brought a warmth to my heart. If only they had come because they truly wanted to be here, not out of obligation or guilt. Rebecca set the orchid next to Amanda's gift basket and perched on the edge of my bed, taking my hand. "How are you feeling? Really?" For the first time, since any of them had arrived, I felt a genuine connection. Rebecca had always been my most emotionally intuitive child, even if that intuition didn't always translate to reliable action. "I'm scared," I admitted, "but also ready to fight. The doctors seem confident that treatment can help, even if the statistics aren't particularly encouraging." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "I should have come yesterday. I'm so sorry about the gallery opening. It seems so stupid now." "It's okay," I said, squeezing her hand. "You're here now." The four of us spent the next hour together, the most time we had shared in the same room since Christmas 6 months ago. There were moments of genuine warmth and connection, glimpses of the family we could be, should be, in times of crisis. But there were also telltale signs of their detachment. Amanda checking her watch repeatedly, Christopher answering emails. On his phone, Rebecca starting stories about her gallery plans that somehow always centered on her own ambitions rather than my situation. As visiting hours neared their end, a nurse came in to administer my evening medications and check my vitals. "Just a reminder that visiting hours end at 8:00, she said cheerfully. Amanda stood up immediately, gathering her purse. "We should let you rest before your treatment tomorrow. Christopher, Rebecca, are you both parked in the south lot? We could walk out together." The efficiency with which all three prepared to leave was almost comical. Gathering belongings, making vague promises to return tomorrow, if possible, offering quick hugs and perfunctory kisses on the cheek. "Mom, text if you need anything." "Tonight?" Amanda said, already halfway to the door. "I'll try to come by during lunch tomorrow," Christopher added, slinging his messenger bag over his shoulder. Rebecca lingered a moment longer than her siblings. "I really am sorry about yesterday," she whispered, giving me a final hug. "I'll do better. I promise." After they left, the room felt strangely empty, yet peaceful. I reached for the notepad, where I had started my list last night, and added a second item under Update Will. No regrets. The evening passed quietly. I read a bit, dozed off and on, and exchanged texts with Diane confirming she would be here at 8:30 tomorrow morning for my first treatment. When Nurse Sophia came in for the final check of the night, she noticed Amanda's elaborate gift basket, still wrapped in cellophane. "Aren't you going to open that?" she asked. "Looks like good stuff in there." I glanced at it. "Tomorrow, maybe. Too tired tonight." Sophia nodded understandingly. "Get some rest then. Big day tomorrow." After she left, I found myself staring at the gift basket. Expensive tea, gourmet chocolates, scented lotion, all beautifully arranged. Amanda had always been good at selecting perfect gifts. It was her love language, as they say now. But somehow, the untouched basket seemed to symbolize our relationship. Beautiful on the surface, carefully curated, but ultimately unopened and unused. Morning came early, with a flurry of pre-treatment preparations. Blood was drawn, vital signs checked, and Dr. Chen stopped by to explain once more what to expect during and after the chemotherapy. Breakfast arrived, though I was advised to eat, lightly given potential nausea later. At 8:25, there was a soft knock on my door, and Diane entered, carrying a tote bag and accompanied by Helen from the book club. Reinforcements reporting for duty, Helen announced. I brought knitting to keep my hands busy, trashy celebrity magazines to distract you if needed, and 30 years of experience sitting with anxious students during testing. I'm an excellent handholder. Their matter-of-fact approach to the IT situation was exactly what I needed. No dramatic displays of emotion, no nervous energy, just steady, reliable presence. At 8:45, Martin Reynolds arrived with the revised will documents, a notary, and another attorney from his firm to serve as witnesses. We completed the signing efficiently, with Diane stepping into the hallway during the process since she was named in the documents. "It's officially done," Martin said, handing me a sealed envelope containing my copy of the will. "I have the original for safekeeping at our office, and electronic copies have been sent to your email as discussed." "Thank you for making this happen so quickly," I said. He nodded solemnly. "I wish you the very best with your treatment today, Mrs. Walsh. You have my card if you need any clarifications or wish to make further changes." Just as Martin and his colleagues were leaving, a hospital technician arrived with the chemotherapy equipment. Diane and Helen settled into chairs on either side of my bed, as the technician and a specialized oncology nurse explained the procedure. The medication would be administered through an IV port that had been placed yesterday, and the initial infusion would take about 3 hours. "Are you ready?" the nurse asked gently. I took a deep breath and nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." As the medication began flowing into my veins, I felt a strange sense of calm. I had made my decisions about my treatment, about my estate, about the kind of relationships I wanted in whatever time I had left. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had prioritized my own needs and values without reflexively accommodating everyone else's convenience. I glanced at Diane and Helen, both quietly present and attentive. And then at the door, where no children had appeared, despite knowing exactly when my treatment would begin. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. This wasn't the support system I had expected to have during this fight, but it was the one that had shown up. And perhaps that was the most important lesson of all, that family is ultimately defined not by blood or obligation, but by presence, by showing up, by making someone else's crisis a priority over your own convenience. It was a lesson my children hadn't learned yet. But maybe, just maybe, my revised will would teach them what all my years of unconditional support and accommodation had failed to impart. As the medication continued its slow drip into my body, I closed my eyes and made a silent promise to myself. However long or short my remaining time might be, I would spend it with people who chose to be present, not just when it was convenient, but when it mattered most. "Eleanor?" Diane's voice broke into my thoughts. "Are you okay? You looked far away for a moment." I opened my eyes and smiled. At my friend. "I'm right here," I said. "Right exactly where I need to be." The first round of chemotherapy left me exhausted in a way I had never experienced before. It wasn't the tiredness that comes after a long day of teaching or the fatigue following a sleepless night. This was a bone-deep weariness that made even lifting my hand to reach for water feel like an insurmountable task. By early afternoon, nausea had set in despite the anti-nausea medications added to my IV. "This is completely normal," the oncology nurse reassured me as she checked my vital signs. "The first treatment is often the hardest because you don't know what to expect. Many patients find it gets a bit easier once they develop their own coping strategies." Diane hadn't left my side since the treatment began, reading aloud from our book club selection when I felt up to listening, sitting in companionable silence when I didn't. Helen had gone home around noon, promising to return tomorrow with Patricia and reinforcements from the English department. Around 2 o'clock, as I dozed fitfully between waves of nausea, I became vaguely aware of voices at the door. "She's resting right now," Diane was saying quietly. "The first treatment has been rough." "I understand, but I'm her daughter. I just want to see how she's doing." Amanda's voice pitched somewhere between insistence and irritation. I opened my eyes, the hospital room coming slowly into focus. "It's okay, Diane. Amanda can come in." Amanda appeared at my bedside, immaculately dressed in a tailored pantsuit, her expression shifting from annoyance to shock as she took in my appearance. Had I changed that much in just a few hours? Perhaps. The nurse had mentioned that some patients develop a grayish pallor during treatment. "Mom," she said softly, her professional demeanor momentarily cracking. "I didn't realize. I thought you'd just be sitting here getting the medication. I didn't know you'd feel so sick already." "It's hitting me a bit hard," I admitted. "But the doctors say that's normal." Amanda set her purse down and perched carefully on the edge of the visitor's chair, as if afraid to fully commit to staying. "I managed to move my afternoon meeting to a conference call so I could stop by. Is there anything you need? Anything I can do?" The question hung in the air, so genuine yet so limited. What I needed, what I had always needed from my children, was simply their presence. Not stolen moments between meetings, not dutiful check-ins, but the kind of unwavering support I had always given them. "Just sitting with me for a while would be nice," I said. Diane stood up. "I'll go get some fresh air. And maybe some real coffee. Amanda, would you like me to bring you anything?" "No, thank you," Amanda replied, her tone polite but dismissive. After Diane left, Amanda turned back to me. "Mom, don't get me wrong. It's nice that your friends are helping, but shouldn't family be handling this? Christopher, Rebecca, and I could work out a schedule. We're your children." I closed my eyes briefly, fighting another wave of nausea. "That would be wonderful, Amanda. But all three of you have such busy lives and important commitments. I wouldn't want to disrupt everything." "Well, of course we have responsibilities, but this is different. This is..." She trailed off, perhaps realizing that the cancer diagnosis should have qualified as different from the beginning, not just now that she had seen its effects firsthand. "I know you all care," I said gently, "but caring and showing up are sometimes different things. Diane and the book club ladies have made me a priority, not an obligation to fit between other commitments." Amanda flinched slightly. "That's not fair, Mom. We're trying. It's just..." My phone chimed with a text message, interrupting her defense. It was from Rebecca. "Stuck in a meeting with potential investors. Can't make it today after all. Will? Call tonight. So sorry. Love you." Amanda, who had glanced at my phone screen, sighed. "Rebecca was supposed to come with me. She promised she'd be here." "It's okay," I said automatically, the response so ingrained after years of making excuses for my children's absences. "She has an important meeting." "It's not okay," Amanda said, surprising me. "None of this is okay. You have cancer, Mom. Actually, can I see your phone for a minute?" Too tired to question her, I handed over my phone. Amanda quickly typed something, her fingers moving rapidly across the screen. "There," she said, handing it back. I told her exactly what she's missing by not being here. I glanced at the text she had sent to Rebecca from my phone. "Your mother is gray, exhausted, and vomiting from chemo while you're in another meeting. Figure it out, Rebecca. This isn't optional." "Amanda," I began, not sure whether to be touched by her protectiveness or concerned by her harshness. "No, Mom. Someone needs to be direct about this. We've all been acting like your cancer is an inconvenience to our schedules rather than a life-threatening illness. Including me," she added quietly. "I'm sorry it took seeing you like this to make me understand." The sincerity in her voice brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for coming today," I said simply. Amanda reached for my hand, careful to avoid disturbing the IV line. "I've arranged to work remotely for the rest of the week. I'll be here tomorrow for the full treatment day." "But what about Zach's IEP meeting and the charity auction planning?" She shook her head firmly. "Someone else can handle the auction, and I've rescheduled Zach's meeting for next week. This is more important. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps my children could change, that maybe this crisis could teach them the lesson I had failed to impart through years of unconditional support and love. Around 4 o'clock, Christopher arrived, carrying his laptop bag and a small paper sack. Sorry I couldn't come earlier. The client presentation ran long, and then we had to revise some of the... He stopped, taking in my appearance with the same shock Amanda had shown. Mom, are you okay? She's having a rough reaction to the first treatment, Amanda answered for me. Which is why one of us should have been here from the beginning. Christopher had the grace to look ashamed. I didn't realize it would hit so hard so quickly. I thought. I don't know what I thought. It's all right, I said weakly. What's in the bag? He brightened slightly, holding up the paper sack. Ginger candies. Dr. Hendricks said they sometimes help with chemo nausea. And I brought my laptop so I could work from here for a while, if that's okay. Of course it's okay, I said, touched by the gesture despite its limitations. Christopher setting up his laptop to work by my bedside wasn't the same as giving me his full attention, but it was still a significant improvement over his complete absence. As Christopher arranged himself in the corner chair with his laptop, Amanda's phone rang. She checked the screen and frowned. It's Rebecca. I should take this. She stepped into the hallway, closing the door partially behind her. Christopher looked up from his computer. How bad is it really, Mom? The treatment, I mean. I considered sugarcoating it, my usual approach to avoid worrying my children, but decided honesty might be more useful now. It's harder than I expected. The nausea comes in waves, and I'm so tired I can barely move, and this is just day 1. He nodded slowly, absorbing this. And you have to do this how many times? Twice a week for the next 6 weeks, then they'll reassess. Christopher closed his laptop. That's a lot. Yes, I agreed simply. Why didn't you make it clearer how serious this was from the beginning? When you called about the diagnosis, you made it sound like just another doctor's appointment. The question caught me off guard, not because it was unreasonable, but because it reflected an expectation I had never contemplated, that I should have to emphasize the seriousness of cancer to my own children. That I have pancreatic cancer wasn't sufficient information to convey urgency. I suppose I assumed that cancer would speak for itself, I said finally. That you would understand what it meant without me having to spell it out. Christopher looked away, his expression troubled. I should have known better. I do know better. I've been so caught up in my own world. Before I could respond, Amanda returned, her face tight with anger. Rebecca is unbelievable. She's still claiming she can't get away from her meeting, as if her art gallery is more important than being here for her own mother during chemotherapy. Amanda, please, I said, the effort of mediating between my children adding to my exhaustion. Everyone processes difficult news differently. Rebecca will come when she can. That's always been your problem, Mom, Amanda said, her voice rising slightly. You make excuses for everyone. You never hold anyone accountable. Not Dad when he worked too much and missed our events. Not us when we take advantage of your generosity. Not even Rebecca when she consistently puts herself first. The accuracy of her observation struck me deeply. Had my endless accommodation enabled their self-centered behavior? Had my refusal to express disappointment or demand consideration taught them that my needs were perpetually secondary? Before I could respond, the door opened completely, and Rebecca stood there, slightly breathless, her eyes red as if she had been crying. I'm here, she announced, dropping her oversized bag on the floor. Meeting be damned. Amanda's expression shifted from surprise to satisfaction. Well, look who finally decided to show up. Don't start, Amanda, Rebecca warned, moving to my bedside. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have been here from the beginning. The sight of all three of my children together in my hospital room for the second time in 2 days was almost overwhelming. Despite the circumstances, despite all the disappointments and missed opportunities, a part of me rejoiced in having them near. "What matters is that you're all here now," I said, reaching for Rebecca's hand. For the next hour, my hospital room felt more like our family living room than at any time since the children had left home. Christopher abandoned his laptop entirely, joining his sisters in a conversation that ranged from childhood memories to current events, carefully avoiding the subject of my illness or treatment. It was as if, having acknowledged the seriousness of my condition, they now needed to pretend everything was normal, at least in their conversation. Around 6 o'clock, Diane returned, looking somewhat surprised to find all three of my children present. "I brought dinner from that Italian place you like," she said, holding up a paper bag. "The nurse said it's fine as long as you feel up to eating something." "Thank you, Diane," I said sincerely. "Have you met all my children? You know Amanda, and you met Christopher earlier. This is Rebecca, my youngest." Rebecca smiled uncertainly at Diane. "Thank you for being here for my mom. It means a lot that she hasn't been alone." Diane's expression softened. "Your mother is a remarkable woman. The entire book club considers it a privilege to support her through this." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room, the unspoken contrast between the book club's immediate support and my children's delayed response hanging in the air. Amanda broke the tension, reaching for her purse. "We should probably let Mom rest and try to eat something, but we'll work out a schedule so one of us is here for every treatment from now on." "Actually," Christopher interjected, "I've been thinking, maybe we should consider hiring a professional caregiver to help. Someone who can be here consistently when we can't due to work commitments." I felt a pang of disappointment at his suggestion, not because professional help was inappropriate, but because it represented another layer of outsourcing their personal involvement. "I don't need a caregiver yet," I said firmly. "The doctors expect me to maintain my independence between treatments, at least for the first few weeks, and I have friends who have already organized support. But Mom, professional care would be more reliable," Christopher argued. "We could find someone really qualified, with oncology experience." "What Christopher means," Amanda interjected, shooting her brother a warning look, "is that we want to make sure you have the best possible care, in addition to our being here as much as we can." Rebecca, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Why don't we talk about what Mom actually wants instead of making decisions for her? Mom, what would be most helpful for you right now?" The directness of her question caught me by surprise. None of my children had actually asked me what I wanted or needed since the diagnosis. "What I want," I said carefully, "is for my family to be present. Not just physically, but emotionally. I don't need constant attendance or professional care yet. I need to know that the people I love most in this world consider me a priority, not an obligation." A heavy silence fell over the room. Amanda looked away. Christopher studied his hands, and Rebecca bit her lip. "We do love you, Mom," Amanda finally said. "We just got caught up in our own lives and forgot to show it properly." "I know you love me," I assured them, "but love without action is just sentiment. I've spent my entire life showing up for all of you. Every game, every performance, every crisis, every celebration. I never once had to be reminded that my children were a priority, because you always were, automatically and without question." My words landed with visible impact. None of them spoke for a long moment, each seemingly lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Rebecca stood up. "We should let you rest and eat the dinner Diane brought, but we'll be back tomorrow, I promise. And not just for a quick visit between other commitments." As they gathered their belongings and prepared to leave, I noticed a new thoughtfulness in their movements, a hesitation that suggested they were reconsidering more than just their immediate plans. After they had gone, Diane helped me sit up more comfortably and arranged the containers of Italian food on my tray. They seemed different today, she observed. More present. Yes, I agreed, taking a small sip of the minestrone soup she had brought. Seeing the reality of chemotherapy made it real for them in a way the diagnosis alone didn't. Sometimes people need concrete evidence before they can fully understand, Diane said diplomatically. I nodded, too tired to analyze my children's motivations further. The soup was warm and comforting, settling my stomach somewhat after hours of nausea. As Diane chatted softly about book club gossip and community news, I found myself drifting, in and out of consciousness, the exhaustion of the day finally overcoming me. When I woke again, the room was dimly lit, and Diane was gone. A night nurse I hadn't met before was adjusting my IV. Good evening, Mrs. Walsh, she said when she noticed I was awake. I'm Grace, your nurse until morning. How are you feeling? Tired, I admitted. What time is it? Just after 10. Your friend left about an hour ago, once you were soundly asleep. She said to tell you she'll be back tomorrow around noon, and someone named Patricia will be here in the morning. I nodded, grateful once again for the book club's organized support. Thank you. You also had a visitor while you were sleeping, Grace continued. Your daughter Rebecca came back. She said she forgot to leave something for you. She gestured to the bedside table, where a small notebook bound in soft leather rested next, to my water glass. Curious, I reached for the notebook, opening it to find Rebecca's distinctive handwriting on the first page. Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about showing up and being present. You're right. Words without actions are just noise. So, here's my promise, in writing. I will be here for your treatment tomorrow from 9 a.m. until it's done. No meetings, no excuses. I've already informed the gallery investors that family health takes precedence. This notebook is for both of us, a place to write things we might find hard to say aloud. I've always expressed myself better in writing. Wonder where I got that from. So I thought this might help us reconnect during the difficult days ahead. All my love, Rebecca. The tears came then, silent and cleansing, as I traced my fingers over my youngest daughter's handwriting. Of my 3 children, Rebecca had always been the most like me, sensitive, creative, sometimes struggling to verbalize deeper emotions. This gesture, so thoughtful and so perfectly tailored to our relationship, touched me deeply. I reached for the pen beside the hospital telephone and began to write beneath Rebecca's note. Dearest Rebecca, your gift means more than you can know. In a time when words often fail me, having this space to share thoughts feels like a precious gift. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. All my love, Mom. Setting the notebook aside, I found myself reflecting on the day's events. Despite the physical misery of the treatment, something important had shifted in my relationship with my children. The walls of self-absorption and habitual neglect had begun to crack, allowing glimpses of the caring adults I had raised them to be. Would it last? I didn't know. People often make promises in moments of crisis that fade when the immediate shock passes. But the revised will sitting in Martin Reynolds' office offered some assurance that the lessons of this time wouldn't be entirely forgotten, even if their current resolve weakened. The night passed in fitful sleep, interrupted by vital sign checks and medication doses. By morning, the worst of the nausea had subsided, replaced by a profound fatigue that made even simple movements require conscious effort. Dr. Rivera stopped by during early rounds, seeming pleased with how I had weathered the first treatment despite the side effects. The fact that your body is showing a strong reaction is actually a good sign, she explained. It often indicates that the medication is actively working against the cancer cells. That's a rather optimistic way of looking at feeling terrible, I observed dryly. Dr. Rivera smiled. Sometimes we have to find silver linings where we can. Rest today, drink plenty of fluids, and we'll see you again on Thursday for the second treatment. After she left, I managed to eat a few bites of the hospital breakfast and wash my face with the disposable cloths the nurse provided. The simple acts of self-care left me exhausted, but feeling marginally more human. True to her word, Patricia. From the book club arrived at 8:30, carrying a tote bag filled with magazines, a thermos of proper tea, and soft, warm socks. Because hospital rooms are always freezing and cold feet make everything worse. Shortly before 9, as Patricia was helping me change into the fresh nightgown she had brought from my home, there was a knock at the door. "Just a minute," Patricia called, adjusting the nightgown over my shoulders. When she opened the door, Rebecca stood there, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail rather than her usual carefully styled waves. She carried a small duffel bag and the determined expression of someone who had made a decision and intended to stick with it. "Good morning," she said, stepping into the room. "I'm here for the day, as promised." Patricia beamed at her. "Wonderful. Eleanor could use some family support today. The first day after treatment can be almost as challenging as the treatment itself." Rebecca set down her bag and moved to my bedside, leaning down to kiss my cheek. "How are you feeling this morning, Mom?" "Tired," I admitted, "but better than yesterday afternoon." Rebecca nodded, pulling up a chair. "I brought some things to make you more comfortable. A blanket from home, your favorite hand lotion, and the photo album from our trip to Maine. Remember that summer when we rented the cottage on the lake?" The thoughtfulness of her selections touched me deeply. The Maine trip had been our last, real family vacation before James became ill. A golden time of laughter, exploration, and connection that held special memories for all of us. "That's very thoughtful, sweetheart," I said, reaching for her hand. "But you don't have to spend your whole day here. I know you have important meetings for the gallery." Rebecca squeezed my hand firmly. "The meetings can wait. Some things are non-negotiable, Mom. I've realized that too late, but I'm hoping it's not too late to change." Patricia, sensing a moment that called for privacy, gathered her things. "I'll come back this afternoon to check on you, Eleanor. Rebecca, it's wonderful to see you stepping up for your mother." After Patricia left, Rebecca helped me settle more comfortably against the pillows and opened the photo album she had brought. "Look at us here," she said, pointing to a photo of all 5 of us, James, myself, and the 3 children, standing on a rocky shore with the ocean behind us. Dad was so sunburned from falling asleep on the boat. He refused to wear sunscreen. I remembered, smiling at the image of my late husband's reddened face. Said it was too greasy. We spent the next hour paging through the album, each photo unlocking memories and stories. It was the most relaxed, genuine interaction I had shared with any of my children since the diagnosis, possibly longer. Around 10:30, Amanda arrived, dressed in what she called her casual clothes, but still looking polished in tailored pants and a cashmere sweater. "Good morning," she said, seeming surprised to find Rebecca already there. "How are you feeling, Mom?" "A little better," I said. Rebecca and I were just looking at old photos from Maine. Amanda set down her designer tote bag and peered at the album. "Oh wow, I remember that trip. That was the summer I was obsessed with marine biology and made everyone listen to my lectures about tide pools." Rebecca laughed. "You were such a know-it-all. You had those laminated identification cards for every shell and creature we found." "I was thorough," Amanda defended herself, but she was smiling. "Is Christopher coming today?" "He texted me earlier," Rebecca said. "He has a client emergency this morning but promised to be here by lunch." I noticed Rebecca's tone lacked the usual defensiveness or competition that often characterized the siblings' interactions. There was simply a statement of fact, without judgment or comparison. Perhaps the gravity of my illness was having the unexpected effect of softening the long-standing rivalries between my children. As the morning progressed, the hospital room took on an almost homey atmosphere. Amanda had brought a selection of light, easily digestible foods that might appeal to my unsettled stomach. Rebecca read aloud from a novel I had been meaning to. Start before the diagnosis interrupted my normal routines. We talked, really talked, about everything except the elephant in the room. My prognosis and what it might mean for all of us. Finally, during a lull in the conversation, I decided to broach the subject myself. I want you both to know that I've updated my will and advance directives. Amanda and Rebecca exchanged quick glances. Mom, you don't need to worry about that right now, Amanda said carefully. Let's focus on your treatment and recovery. Actually, this is exactly the right time to address it, I countered gently. When we're all thinking clearly, and I'm well enough to explain my decisions. Rebecca looked uncomfortable but nodded. Okay, if you want to talk about it, we're listening. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I've made some changes that reflect what matters most to me at this stage of my life. My estate will now be divided differently than before. Amanda's posture stiffened slightly, though she tried to hide it. What kind of changes? I've created a trust, I explained, keeping my tone matter of fact. Each of you will receive a modest sum outright. The majority of my assets will remain in the trust, with distributions tied to specific conditions. Conditions? Rebecca repeated, her brow furrowing. What does that mean exactly? It means that accessing the bulk of your inheritance will depend on demonstrating the values that matter most to me. Genuine presence in family relationships, meaningful contribution to others, and regular commitment to causes I care about. A heavy silence fell over the room. Amanda's expression was carefully neutral, though I could almost see the calculations happening behind her eyes. Rebecca looked more openly troubled. Mom, this sounds like, I don't know, like you're trying to control us from beyond the grave or something, Rebecca said hesitantly. I prefer to think of it as clarifying what truly matters to me. I replied calmly. My legacy isn't just financial. It's about the values I hope to see continue in my family. Amanda cleared her throat. Does Christopher know about this? Not yet. I plan to tell all three of you together, but since we're discussing it now, I wanted to be honest with you both. Rebecca's eyes widened. So we're being tested? To see if we deserve our inheritance? Not tested, I corrected gently. Guided. The trust isn't about punishing anyone. It's about encouraging choices that reflect what I value most, what I've always tried to teach you. Amanda's practical nature quickly surfaced. What exactly are these conditions? How specific are they? Regular volunteer work with organizations that help others. Consistent participation in family gatherings and support during times of need. Mentoring young people in your fields. The trust administrator will have some discretion in evaluating how well these conditions are being met. And who's the administrator? Amanda asked, her tone carefully neutral. Diane, I said simply. Both daughters looked startled by this revelation. Diane from the book club? Amanda clarified, clearly surprised. Not one of us? Not a professional trustee or bank? Diane has known our family for over 20 years, I explained. She understands the spirit of what I'm trying to accomplish, not just the letter of the document. And she has no personal stake in the distributions, which makes her more objective than any of you would be. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her expressive face cycling through several emotions. Is this because we didn't come to the hospital right away? Are you punishing us for that? The hurt in her voice cut through me, but I held firm to my resolve. This isn't about punishment, Rebecca. It's about recognition. Recognition that actions have always spoken louder than words in our family, though I've spent too many years pretending otherwise. Amanda, ever the pragmatist, seemed to be processing the practical implications. So basically, if we don't volunteer and show up for family events, we don't get our full inheritance? That's oversimplifying it, I said. The trust doesn't require performative actions or checking boxes. It's designed to encourage genuine engagement with the values that matter most to me, the values I thought I had instilled in all of you. Before either daughter could respond, The door opened and Christopher entered, looking slightly harried but more casually dressed than his usual business attire. "Sorry I'm late. Client emergency finally resolved." He paused, sensing the tension in the room. "What did I miss?" Amanda turned to him with uncharacteristic bluntness. "Mom's changed her will. We only get our full inheritance if we prove we're good enough people by volunteering and showing up for family events." Christopher looked from Amanda to me, clearly confused. "What?" "That's not an accurate summary," I said, feeling suddenly tired. The emotional toll of this conversation was adding to my physical exhaustion. "Christopher, please sit down. I'd like to explain properly." As Christopher settled into the remaining chair, I repeated my explanation of the trust arrangement, being careful to emphasize that it wasn't punitive, but purposeful. He listened intently, asking fewer clarifying questions than Amanda, but seeming to absorb the information deeply. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "So this is already done? The will is signed?" "Yes," I confirmed. "The documents were finalized yesterday." Christopher nodded slowly. "I can't say I'm thrilled about being essentially put on probation to receive my inheritance, but I understand why you felt it was necessary." His measured response surprised me. Of my 3 children, Christopher had always been the most reserved, emotionally, but also the most reflective. He wasn't quick to anger or defense, preferring to process information fully before responding. Amanda, by contrast, was already moving to problem-solving mode. "We should talk to a lawyer about this. Not to challenge it," she added quickly, seeing my expression, "but to fully understand the parameters, how progress will be measured, what constitutes sufficient compliance, that sort of thing." Rebecca remained unusually quiet, staring down at her hands. Finally, she looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You know what hurts the most? It's not the money or the conditions. It's knowing that you felt you needed to use your will to make us be better people. That after raising us for decades, you don't trust that we'll do the right thing without financial incentives." Her words landed like a physical blow. Had that been what I was doing? Using money to control behavior I couldn't influence through love and example? The doubt must have shown on my face because Rebecca immediately softened. "I'm not saying—" "You're wrong, Mom. Obviously, we let you down when you needed us most. I just wish. I wish we'd given you reason to have more faith in us." The raw honesty of her statement hung in the air, creating a moment of genuine connection that transcended the practical details of wills and trusts. "I do have faith in you," I said finally. "All of you. The trust isn't about lack of faith. It's about aligning my legacy with my values in a way that speaks the language each of you seems most fluent in right now. Practicality." Christopher cleared his throat. "I think I understand. You're using the same motivational tactics we've been using in our own lives. Measurable goals, clear metrics, tangible rewards. You're meeting us where we are." His insight was remarkably perceptive, cutting through the emotional reactions to identify the underlying strategy. "Yes," I acknowledged. "Exactly that." Amanda seemed to be reconsidering her initial defensiveness. "So this isn't a punishment for not visiting you in the hospital. It's a course correction for patterns that have been developing for years." "Yes," I said again, grateful for her understanding. "Patterns I've enabled by never expressing disappointment or establishing consequences." Rebecca wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I hope you know that I would have come around eventually. Trust or no trust. I love you, Mom. I've just been lost in my own ambitions, I guess." "I know that, sweetheart," I assured her. "I've always known that all 3 of you love me. But love expresses itself through actions, not intentions. The trust is simply a reminder of that fundamental truth." Christopher reached for the water pitcher on my bedside table, pouring me a fresh glass. "Well, if nothing else, this has certainly gotten our attention. Very strategic, Mom. I didn't know you had it in you. There was a note of reluctant admiration in his voice that made me smile despite the heaviness of the conversation. I taught high school English for 35 years, Christopher. I know a thing or two about motivational strategies. The tension in the room gradually eased as we moved on to other topics. Amanda detailed her plan to ensure one of them would be present for each treatment. Christopher mentioned speaking with his firm about adjusting his schedule to accommodate regular hospital visits. Rebecca suggested setting up a group text so they could coordinate their support efforts more efficiently. Watching them plan and organize, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was satisfaction in seeing them step up, albeit belatedly. There was sadness that it had taken both a serious diagnosis and financial incentives to prompt this change. And there was a quiet hope that perhaps, over time, the external motivation might cultivate genuine internal change. Around lunchtime, a nutrition aide brought in my meal tray, bland hospital fare designed for sensitive post-chemo stomachs. Amanda immediately pulled out the insulated bag she had brought, revealing containers of homemade bone broth, steamed vegetables, and rice pudding. The hospital nutritionist gave me a list of recommended foods, she explained, setting up the containers on my tray. I made everything myself this morning. The gesture was so unexpectedly thoughtful that I felt tears spring to my eyes. Thank you, Amanda. That's very kind. Don't act so surprised, she said, though her tone was light. I do know how to cook. I just usually don't have time. But you made time today, I observed quietly. She paused, meeting my eyes directly. Yes, I did. The simple acknowledgement felt like a first step, small but significant, toward the kind of mindful presence I had been trying to encourage. As the afternoon progressed, my hospital room took on an almost festive atmosphere. Patricia and Helen from the book club stopped by, bearing more home-cooked food and cheerful updates on community happenings. My children, remarkably, remained. Throughout the visits, engaging with my friends in ways they never had before. Christopher asked Helen thoughtful questions about her grandchildren. Amanda discussed local politics with Patricia. Rebecca seemed genuinely interested in the book club's current selection, asking to borrow a copy. By evening, I was exhausted but heartened by the day's developments. As visiting hours drew to a close, my children prepared to leave, each promising to return the next day according to the schedule they had worked out. I'll be here in the morning, Amanda said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. Christopher will come after lunch, and Rebecca has the evening shift. We won't leave you alone again. Thank you, I said simply, too tired for lengthy expressions of gratitude. After they had gone, the night nurse, Grace, came in to check my vitals and administer my evening medications. You had quite the crowd today, she observed with a smile. Big improvement from yesterday. Yes, I agreed. My children are adjusting. Family can surprise you, Grace said, adjusting my blankets. Sometimes it takes a wake-up call, but when they finally get it, they can really step up. Her words stayed with me as I drifted off to sleep, my body still heavy with treatment fatigue, but my mind more at peace than it had been since the diagnosis. The next 2 weeks followed, a similar pattern. True to their word, my children maintained a constant presence during my hospital stay and subsequent treatments. Amanda reorganized her work schedule to be available every morning, often bringing carefully prepared meals and handling communication with doctors during their morning rounds. Christopher took the afternoon shifts, his laptop always present, but increasingly unused as he focused more on conversation and support. Rebecca covered evenings, bringing books, magazines, and the leather-bound journal that had become our shared space for thoughts too difficult to voice aloud. By the third treatment, the initial shock and guilt that had motivated their attention was evolving into something that felt more like genuine care and presence. Amanda no longer checked her watch constantly. Christopher had stopped taking client calls during his visits. Rebecca talked less about her gallery plans and more about memories we shared. Dr. Rivera noted the change during one of her visits. "Your support system has really come together," she observed. "That's a significant positive factor in treatment outcomes. Patients with strong social support typically have better responses to therapy." I was discharged after the 4th treatment, deemed well enough to continue as an outpatient with home care between sessions. The transition from hospital to home brought new challenges and opportunities for my children to demonstrate their commitment. On my first night home, I discovered that my house had been subtly transformed in my absence. The guest room on the main floor had been converted into a comfortable bedroom for me, eliminating the need to navigate stairs. The kitchen had been reorganized, with frequently used items placed at accessible heights. A new comfortable chair had appeared in the living room, positioned to catch the morning light from the east-facing windows. "We thought you might be more comfortable with everything on one level," Amanda explained as she helped me settle into the new bedroom. "And we've set up a schedule for the next few weeks. One of us will stay here each night, at least until we're sure you're managing the side effects well." I was deeply touched by the thoughtfulness of these arrangements. This must have taken considerable effort. Christopher handled the furniture moving and room setup. Rebecca organized the kitchen and decorated this room with some of your favorite things from upstairs. I coordinated the schedule and stocked the pantry and refrigerator with approved foods, Amanda detailed, her natural organizational skills evident in the systematic approach. "Thank you," I said, the words feeling inadequate, for the gratitude I felt. "All of you." Amanda paused in her efficient unpacking of my hospital bag. "You know, Mom, we're not doing this because of the trust. We would have figured it out eventually, even without that incentive." "I know," I said, and I found that I truly believed it. The trust had accelerated their response, certainly. But the genuine care I was witnessing went beyond financial motivation. But sometimes we all need a little push to become our better selves. She smiled slightly. "Well, you certainly found an effective push. Very strategic, as Christopher said." The following weeks developed a rhythm around my treatment schedule. Tuesdays and Fridays were chemo days, with recovery periods stretching into Wednesdays and Saturdays. Thursdays and Sundays were my good days, when energy levels allowed for short walks in the garden or visits from friends. Mondays were preparation days, with blood work and doctor consultations to ensure I was strong enough for the next round of treatment. Throughout it all, my children maintained their rotating presence, each finding their own way to provide support. Amanda excelled at managing medical details, keeping meticulous notes during doctor visits, and researching complementary therapies that might ease side effects. Christopher brought a calm, steady presence, often reading aloud to me on days when my eyes were too tired for books. Rebecca channeled her artistic nature into creating comfort, bringing fresh flowers even when I couldn't smell them, playing soft music, and leaving encouraging notes in our shared journal. Diane continued to visit regularly, now in the dual capacity of friend and trust administrator. I had worried that her new legal role might change our relationship, but she approached it with the same warmth and straightforwardness that characterized all her interactions. "Your children are really stepping up," she observed one afternoon as we sat in the garden during one of my better days. Amanda called me yesterday to discuss volunteer opportunities at the Literacy Center. Said she's been thinking about how to use her organizational skills to help others. "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely pleased. "Did she mention the trust?" "Not directly," Diane replied. "But she did ask if I thought a regular commitment of 3 hours weekly would be considered meaningful engagement with causes you care about." I couldn't help smiling, still focused on meeting the metrics. "At least initially," Diane agreed. "But that's how habits form. Start with external motivation, continue long enough, and eventually it becomes internally motivated." Her insight echoed what I had been observing in my children's evolving behavior. What had begun as guilt and obligation then shifted to trust. Compliance was gradually transforming into genuine care and presence. The why mattered less than the what and the how. 6 weeks into treatment, Dr. Rivera ordered a comprehensive scan to assess the tumor's response to chemotherapy. The night before the scan, all 3 of my children stayed over, crowding into my modest home like they hadn't done since holidays during their college years. "There's really no need for everyone to be here," I protested mildly as they arranged sleeping accommodations. "The scan itself is routine." "The scan might be routine, but waiting for results never is," Amanda countered, spreading sheets on the living room sofa where she would sleep. "We'll all go with you tomorrow and wait during the scan. Then we'll bring you home and distract you until the results come in." Their solidarity touched me deeply. Whatever their initial motivations, they were here now, fully present and unified in their support. The next morning, we arrived at the hospital as a family unit, my children forming a protective circle around me as we navigated the now familiar corridors to the imaging department. Dr. Rivera met us briefly before the scan. "Try not to worry too much about today," she advised. "This is just one data point in a longer journey. We'll discuss next steps once we have the complete picture." The scan itself was uneventful, though the required stillness left my already weakened body stiff and sore. By the time we returned home, I was exhausted, needing Amanda and Christopher's support to make it from the car to the house. "Straight to bed," Amanda directed, her tone leaving no room for argument. "We'll wake you when it's time for medication, or if Dr. Rivera calls with results." I slept fitfully, waking every hour or so to find a different child sitting quietly in the chair beside my bed, each engaged in their own activities, but maintaining a watchful presence. It was well into the evening when Dr. Rivera finally called. Christopher answered, listening intently before bringing the phone to me. "It's Dr. Rivera with your results," he said, his face carefully neutral. I took the phone, aware of all 3 children gathering close to hear. "Dr. Rivera, I'm here with my family." "Eleanor," she began, her voice measured. "The scan shows some encouraging news. The tumor has decreased in size by approximately 20%, and we're seeing reduced involvement in the surrounding lymph nodes." A collective breath seemed to release from everyone in the room. "That's positive, right?" I asked, scarcely daring to hope. "It's a very good initial response," she confirmed. "Better than we typically see at this stage. I'd like to continue with the current treatment protocol for another 6 weeks, followed by another assessment. If the positive trend continues, we might discuss surgical options to remove the remaining tumor." After a few more questions and details about the next phase of treatment, I ended the call, looking up to find my children's faces transformed with cautious optimism. 20% reduction, Amanda repeated, her usual composure cracking slightly. "That's significant." "It's a start," Christopher cautioned, ever the pragmatist. "We still have a long way to go." Rebecca, who had been quiet throughout, suddenly burst into tears. "I was so scared," she admitted, wiping at her eyes. "I kept thinking about all the time I wasted, all the times I could have been here for you and wasn't." I reached for her hand. "We can't change the past, Rebecca. We can only move forward from where we are now. And right now, things are looking more hopeful than they were 6 weeks ago." The evening that followed felt like a gentle celebration, not of victory, which was still far from assured, but of possibility, of more time, of second chances. We ordered takeout from my favorite restaurant, bending the strict dietary rules just slightly for the occasion. We talked late into the night, not about cancer or treatments or prognoses, but about memories, hopes, and small, everyday joys that had been overlooked in the crisis atmosphere of recent weeks. Looking around at my children's faces in the warm glow of the living room lamps, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey ahead remained uncertain. Treatment would continue to be difficult. Recovery, if it came, would be slow and incremental. But something fundamental had shifted in our family dynamic, something that felt more significant than any medical outcome. It wasn't just that my children were physically present now. It was that they were emotionally present in a way they hadn't been for years. They were seeing me, really seeing me, perhaps for the first time since their childhoods. And in turn, I was seeing them more clearly, not just as the children I had raised, or the disappointing adults who had initially abandoned me in my time of need, but as complex individuals capable of growth, change, and genuine care. Whether this transformation had begun with guilt, been accelerated by the trust's conditions, or emerged from some deeper awakening didn't ultimately matter. What mattered was that it had happened, and continued to evolve in authentic ways that suggested it might endure beyond the immediate crisis. 3 months later, following another round of successful treatments and a surgery that removed the significantly reduced tumor, I sat in Martin Reynolds' office with my 3 children and Diane. The purpose of our meeting was to review and potentially revise the trust arrangements I had created during those first difficult days in the hospital. "Mrs. Walsh," Martin began, "you indicated in our phone conversation that you wanted to discuss possible modifications to the Eleanor Walsh Family Trust. Could you explain what changes you're considering?" All eyes in the room turned to me. My children's expressions were carefully neutral, though I could sense their underlying tension. They had fulfilled every condition of the trust over the past months, going beyond mere compliance to demonstrate genuine commitment to the values I had outlined. But they didn't know why I had called this meeting or what changes I might be contemplating. "I'd like to remove the conditional requirements," I said simply. Surprise flickered across everyone's faces. "You want to eliminate the conditions entirely?" Martin clarified. "Revert to a standard inheritance structure?" "Yes," I confirmed. "The trust has served its purpose, a purpose I now recognize was transitional rather than permanent." Amanda leaned forward slightly. "Mom, if this is because you think we've been feeling burdened or resentful, we haven't. We understand why you structured things the way you did." "It's not about your feelings toward the trust," I explained. "It's about my recognition that the conditions are no longer necessary. They were a bridge during a time when our family relationships needed external structure to function properly. That time is past." Christopher studied me thoughtfully. "You're sure about this? The trust was a pretty significant motivator for all of us initially." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "What began as external motivation has evolved into genuine connection. I don't need legal conditions to ensure my children will be present and supportive now. The past months have demonstrated that conclusively." Rebecca, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "Does this mean you trust us now? To continue being the people we've become, even without the financial incentive?" The vulnerability in her question touched me deeply. "Yes, Rebecca. That's exactly what it means." Martin nodded, making notes on his legal pad. "I can draft the amendments today. We'll need to schedule another signing with witnesses, but the process is straightforward." After discussing a few technical details, the meeting concluded. As we prepared to leave, Diane pulled me aside while my children gathered their belongings. "Are you certain about this, Eleanor?" she asked quietly. "People often revert to old patterns once the crisis passes." I looked across the room at my 3 children, Amanda checking her phone but immediately putting it away when Christopher spoke to her, Rebecca laughing at something Amanda said, all 3 engaged with each other in a way that had been rare before my illness. "I'm certain," I assured her. "Whatever happens with my health going forward, something fundamental has changed in our family. The trust served its purpose as a wake-up call. The ongoing connection we've built since then is about something much deeper than inheritance conditions." Diane squeezed my hand. "Then I'm happy to be relieved of my trustee duties. It was an honor to be trusted with that responsibility, but I much prefer being simply your friend." As we left the lawyer's office, Amanda linked her arm through mine, on one side while Rebecca took my other arm. Christopher walked slightly ahead, holding doors and clearing a path through the crowded lobby. "So, Mom," Amanda said brightly, "now that you've officially decided we're trustworthy adults, how do you feel about joining us for dinner? We made reservations at that new place by the river you mentioned wanting to try." "All three of you planned this?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "Together?" "We're capable of coordination when properly motivated," Christopher called over his shoulder. "And these days, our motivation has nothing to do with wills or trusts. It's about time," Rebecca added softly, "making up for lost time and creating new memories while we can." As we stepped into the bright afternoon sunlight, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. The journey had been painful. First, the diagnosis, then the abandonment, then the difficult conversations and necessary confrontations. But standing here now, surrounded by my children's genuine care and attention, I recognized that sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most meaningful destinations. My illness had forced a reckoning that was long overdue. My will had provided the structure for that reckoning to unfold. But the authentic reconnection that had followed was something no legal document could create or sustain. It had emerged from the space that crisis creates, the clarifying effect of facing mortality and recognizing what truly matters before it's too late. Whatever the future held, more treatment, potential recovery, or eventual decline, I now faced it with the knowledge that my greatest legacy was not the assets detailed in my will, but the values finally embodied in the children walking beside me, fully present at last. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.